Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I want to take a look at Ubuntu 22.04. And this is actually the beta release of Ubuntu, which is due to be out officially in just 3 days. 3 days as of the time of filming. So, why am I here early? Because I want to be first. Well, okay, other than that, also because I have found in my personal experience that the beta versions of Ubuntu, when they're this close to the release, are rarely very different afterwards. And so I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of difference in 3 days, but if there is, I'll be back with another video. Ubuntu 22.04 is codenamed Jammy Jellyfish, and I took a look at Jammy actually on my own about, it was at least 3 months ago. In fact, I think it was probably way back in December 2021. The beta, I think, was fairly new, and back then when I took a look at it, I was pretty impressed with it, but now even more impressed. And also 22.04 is based on Gnome 42, which is cool, but still has a lot of the elements of the older Gnome as well pieced in there. So it kind of works both with the Adwaita stuff and the older Gnomes. Somehow they kind of made them both work together, and that's kind of cool because the Gnome 42 is actually centering itself around Adwaita now, which is the, I guess, the design language you would call it of Gnome. And so widgets and their apps and so forth are based on Adwaita, and now even more so it's become their core. So that's why you don't have GNOME tweaks and things like that anymore. But we'll kind of get to that when we jump into Ubuntu. I'm out at the website right now. I got a link in the description below, and I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to select an image and grab myself a copy of this. And so if I pop in here, we got all these different things to choose from, and these are daily images. So here the latest image is from March 26th, so that was only 2 days ago as of time of filming. And so I'm going to just download this guy. We'll load it in and take a look at it, see what it's like. Be right back. Okay, and here we are. We're at our grub screen here, ready to boot up. So this is our live version. I'm going to hit enter and then jump right in. And I think it's going to go to probably a stop screen where it'll give you a choice to install or go into live. So I think we'll just jump right into the install when it gets there, if that's the case. And nice splash screen too. I like that. Really beautiful graphics. And a little spinner there. And I also want to thank Mustafa for reminding me of Ubuntu Jammy Jellyfish. Totally forgot about it. This is something I downloaded, like I said earlier, back in, I think it was December. It was quite a while ago when I took a look at one of the first betas of 22.04. And I was pretty impressed with it back then. I played with it for probably about a week. I don't think I talked about it back then, but I did play around with it, and I was really kind of liking it. And now that we got the GNOME 42 implementation and so forth in it, it's even more interesting. So I can't wait. Thanks again, Mustafa, for saying something about it. Otherwise, I probably just would have slept on it until beyond the release date. The other thing I like is that we didn't get that annoying disk checking on the way up. So I'm glad about that. Okay, here we are. We're coming into, it kind of looks like the live desktop to me, so maybe it won't be a stop screen. Not sure. But anyway, I'll let it finish doing its thing. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here's our installer. It looks like it's popping up. So it's giving us a choice to try it out or just to install it. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and install it. I'll hit install here and go with the default English. And then the default again for US is good. And then I think a normal is good. We'll let it download all the cool stuff. And updates is good. And I also want to check this box, install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware and additional media formats. That's always a good thing to have on there. So I like to check that. That way I know I got the right drivers and everything that's going to run my networking and Wi-Fi and all the other stuff, graphics and so forth. So in my opinion, that's a good thing to check. It's not checked by default because there's some third-party software in there, and some could be proprietary, so they kind of give you the option. Gonna hit continue, and no detected operating systems. Nice. So I'm gonna go with the default here, just erase the disk and install Ubuntu. And then it's asking for confirmation to write these changes, and I am good with all that, so I'm just gonna hit continue. Where am I? I don't know. I'm in my living room. Why? No, kidding. So New York, that's close enough, so I'll hit continue. And then we'll just give it a name here and a password. And that all looks good. I like the fact that they have a use Active Directory. That's something that's kind of in the Ubuntu thing. And I think this is a Ubiquity installer, it looks like. So that's kind of cool. It looks like it got a little bit of a makeover. Maybe that's due to the libadwaita Gnome 42 core there. Hard to say, but nice. So I'm going to let this install and I'll be right back. Okay, it looks like the installation is complete. So I'm going to go ahead and restart now. And with a little luck, it worked. Okay, we're in our reboot. Got our splash screen. So far, so good. Okay, at our boot screen. We're going to log in real quick. All right, here we go. Nice. And so here we got an initial post-boot screen here. Connect to online accounts. I'm just going to go ahead and skip that, but it's nice that you got that there. If you have any of these that you like to connect with when logging in, an option to report information. So I'll just say no on this, just to kind of speed things up. And I'm good with location service. I know a lot of people aren't. I'm fine with that. It comes in handy sometimes if you're like connecting to a local Walmart or whatever, or looking for restaurant info. It'll pick up your geographical information and help zero in on the place you're looking for, specific to your area. So I do kind of like that. I'm good with it. And then we're ready to go. So here we got our ready to go screen here. And just real quick, I'm going to just hit done. But it's kind of cool here. These are some of the apps they're showing that you can install through the package installer, which is nice. I'm going to hit done and then right click, display settings. And then I'm going to set that at 1920 by 1080. That's better. Give us a better screen. And we'll keep that. Excellent. And then we got a little bit of an internal error there. I saw that a lot when I was in my, back when I downloaded it the first time too. And so it's really just nothing. Usually I just click remember in the future and don't send. I've sent these before and they've always said that they've already received that same message from lots of people. So I think that just kind of goes along with beta. And so here we are, and we got a single lone desktop icon here. And so that's one thing that differentiates Ubuntu right off the bat is you got desktop icons available, and you got a Unity bar over here on the side. So you got this nice sidebar that you have easy access to. And I really like that. I don't really like the vanilla GNOME thing where everything's hidden and not able to have desktop icons and so forth. And I'm sure they probably do that with the help of some GNOME extensions like Dash to Dock and so forth, desktop icons. But the thing is, in GNOME, in Ubuntu, they hold back long enough to wait until the broken extensions are fixed after a GNOME update. So that's kind of nice. And also they kind of mix in the older GNOME with the newer GNOME. And so somehow they make them work together. And I don't quite understand the process fully. But when it comes to Ubuntu, I can really trust having these extras in GNOME. Otherwise, and it's no secret, I'm not a huge fan of GNOME, really. I think they're kind of restricting. However, that's just me. And for a lot of people, GNOME is a great environment to use. And for people that want to kind of get into GNOME, if you don't really care about the desktop icons, like maybe you use a window manager all the time, like Xmonad or something, and you don't have desktop icons anyway. So it really wouldn't matter to you whether you had them or not. And as far as a panel goes, having a panel here, all you got to do is hit your keyboard, hit your Windows key, also known as a super key, or super key also known as a Windows key, and then your panel will pop up from the bottom there. And then, of course, if you want to get directly into your menu, you can just hit Super A, and then that will put you right directly into the menu. And here's our menu. We got our horizontal, and like I said, this is based on GNOME 42, so that is neat. And GNOME 42 now is using the libadwaita as their core for their GNOME apps, GTK4 libadwaita. So that's kind of an exciting new development for a lot of GNOME fans there. Not so cool if you like GNOME tweaks and so forth. I think as far as theming goes, theming was pretty much gone in GNOME 40 and 41. However, now it's totally gone. I mean, you really can't do anything. But there is one thing you can do, and that is you can go into your settings, and I'll just take a shortcut through the desktop settings there just for fun. And now they have appearance. And so this is kind of nice. In the appearance, now they have an option to where you can select a dark mode. So for GNOME, that's a big deal, even though that's kind of standard in other desktops. It's kind of a big deal in GNOME because they really don't like you changing the looks around. if you're somebody that likes to tweak your environment and rice it up and all that, this is not really the desktop for you. You'd rather just kind of stick with what you're using now, which might be KDE or XFCE or what have you. However, there's a lot of people out there that don't care about ricing up their desktop. It's kind of like the person that has a house and they like to redecorate every so often, or they like to go outside and plant new shrubs and put up a fence around their house and make it look all prettied up out there. You know, and then you got other types of people that they just want a condo and they want to have the housing association just kind of dictate everything for them, and they just want to blend in with everyone else, and they don't want to do anything outside and pretty up their place, or they just like it the way it is, and that's it. And so really it's kind of the same way with taste and desktop. If you're more like the condo guy, a Gnome is great. It's perfect. You don't have to do anything like, you know, getting crazy with customizing and all that. So it's kind of, I just recommend personally, especially if you install a good vanilla Gnome, just leave it the way it is. I mean, don't go out and get a bunch of extensions and try to get extensions for it. You'll just have headaches because it'll work for a while and then they'll break. Supposedly that's going to get better in the future. We'll see. However, I think you're going to have the best experience just accepting GNOME the way it is, or going with Ubuntu to have a little bit of a compromise. Okay, and I popped down in the corner here so I'm more out of the way. Just realized I was hogging half the screen. So here I am. And anyways, another thing I like is how you can change the color accents easily right here. Kind of reminds me of Cinnamon. Also, Beepin, I think, does that too, where it has easy access to these. And so this is all kind of cool here. I like that. And I'm kind of liking the green. Maybe I'll go with that. And then here you can adjust your icon size, their positions, and to show your personal folder, which is what we see here on the screen, in the center of the screen there. And then you can auto hide the dock if you wish. And right now it's in panel mode. You can set your icon sizes here so you can make them smaller if you want them smaller or bigger. And by default they were at 48, which display to show on, your position, and you can even configure your dock behavior, which is nice. So right now it's showing on the left, but if you're somebody that likes it on the bottom, you can always just select this and click bottom, or even put it on the right. And then if you're coming over from Mac, or you like the Mac look, then we could even turn off panel mode here, and that'll put it here in the center and kind of give it more of a Mac-like look. So that's another thing that's kind of cool with GNOME, especially in Ubuntu, where you got this showing all the time. And to me, that makes more sense. I don't really understand why they make you go through an extra step to see that bar in standard GNOME. That never really made any sense to me. Personally, I like it there, but I suppose, see why some people would like it the other way. Maybe it's just out of their way. I don't know. I never really had that total minimalist attitude. I don't like a lot of clutter, but I don't like being in the middle of a desert either. So I kind of like being in the middle. And to me, this is kind of in the middle. So yes, panel mode. I guess if I was going to use this in GNOME, might be how I might set it up. Although I'm good with panel mode too. And I guess for the sake of the review, I'll just kind of try to keep it original and have it on the left to keep with that Ubuntu look. But I do like it on the bottom, and I do like the panel mode there. And then here, these are our dock settings, so you can show volumes and devices, which is on. You can also include unmounted volumes, network volumes, and show the trash, which is right there. So I like that. And that's another thing that kind of keeps it Mac-like. You got the trash can showing right there by default, especially when it's down there in the panel on the bottom. So very nice. I like that. And we'll come back to the settings here in a bit. Another thing I really like, let me open this. As you can see, the icons have a new look. It doesn't have that old Adwaita look anymore. I never really liked the Adwaita icons that much. I always thought they looked kind of cheesy, for lack of a better word, I guess. And so a lot of distros have Adwaita as the default icon, and that's usually the first thing I change because I never really liked their look. But this new look here in 42 is really nice. I like the Adwaita look. That's a much overdue, very welcome change in my opinion. So gorgeous icons. I'm really liking these. And so I give that an A+. Good job, GNOME guys. And I believe this is using files, which is actually just Nautilus, really, I think. So yes, Files is a pretty decent overall file manager. And then if we go into our applications again, got a really nice looking screen. I also like the fact that I like these up here where you can, let's say you wanted to play solitaire, you can actually take this and drag it right into that desktop, and then it'll open it right there. So if you click on it, there it is, already open for you and everything. That's kind of cool. I like that. And you can do the same thing with the secondary desktop. It was showing two desktops there. So you can actually do the very same thing in the second desktop too. So if you wanted to have, say, your calendar opened up over here, then boom, it opens up in your second workspace. So I can click here and go right in the calendar. And look how sharp the calendar looks. All the widgets up here are very sharp and defined. Really good looking, because they're using that libadwaita library there, or design, in their core. So just about a big number of the Gnome apps are now using this, and the older ones have not actually complied to that yet, but they'll be adding more and more to the core as they go. But a lot of them are now have the libadwaita as a central core for their design, so that's nice to see. And unless you're a Gnome Tweak fan, then maybe not so nice, but I think it's looking good though. I'm liking what I'm seeing though. I gotta admit, a very nice layout. So here we have all our apps, and if we scroll over, and it's horizontally laid out, of course, and our scrolling, and we have LibreOffice on here by default. Mahjong, that's kind of cool. And there's Minds. I love Minds. That's always been one of my favorite classics there. Password Manager, Power Statistics, Ramina for remote desktop, Sudoku, another cool game, Startup Disk Creator, our startup apps, Software Updater, Software and Updates. So that's our software center there. Then we got Shotwell, Settings, and Transmission. And of course, in our first, where we have a place where we can add additional drivers, advanced network configuration, standard things like the Archive Manager, backups, calendar, which we just looked at, video player, calculator, usage analyzer, text editor. And this is new, actually. The text editor was always gedit in Gnome, and now they changed it. So the text editor, I think it's just called edit, text editor. Okay, so, never mind, gedit, okay. So in the GNOME 42, they're using, I think it's just called edit, but it's kind of their replacement for gedit. And the gedit, the replacement editor, is using the GTK4 libadwaita widgets and so forth. So it's kind of like the updated version of this. It's not too much different. It's supposedly better in some way, but I think it's pretty much a basic editor, just like gedit. So yes, in Ubuntu, you still have gedit. That's good with me personally. An editor is an editor. So yes. And then terminal. And so here, let's open this up and see if this is GNOME terminal. And it is. So Ubuntu is still using, at least at the time of filming, is using GNOME terminal. However, in GNOME 42, and this is made for 42, but in the GNOME 42 desktop, I believe they're calling it just simply console with a C. Not to be confused with the KDE console that starts with a K. However, this is showing GNOME terminal for GNOME 42. And then we have our file manager, I think, which is Nautilus, pretty sure. So we come up here and we got all our different shortcuts over here, and then our beautiful icons. I think these icons are really great. They look fantastic. I like the green and gray here, the contrast and the gradient effect and everything. Huge, much needed improvement in the Adwaita icons. Really a welcome sight there. I see that as a big plus for 42. Then over here on the activities bar, on our panel, we got our Firefox and a bunch of different things. I'm opening Firefox right now because I want to see what version it is. It should be right around the newest version, I would say 98 something, give or take. Here we go. So, Firefox. I'm going to go over here and hit the About and just kind of see the version. And I'm also going to scoop down just a bit here. Yeah, that looks better. Just aesthetics. So let's go down and take a look at our Help and About and see what we're running. So I'm going to come up here to About and 98.0.2. Nice. Okay, so we have a nice recent browser here. Glad to see that. And that's pretty consistent with Ubuntu, especially when you're in a beta. But Ubuntu is pretty good for being kind of up to date on browsers, so that's good. Then we also have our Thunderbird mail client and Rhythmbox for our media player. And then we got LibreOffice here. Writer is on the shortcut there. and then our Ubuntu Software Center, which we're going to take a look at in a second. And then we got our help and the trash. Always need trash. So I'm going to hit Ubuntu Software and open this up, and let's take a look at it. And there we go. So this is that's actually the Gnome software package manager here. So this is looking good, and we got our apps on here, OBS Studio, Vid Cutter, and I see GIMP up there, and Live for Speed, a game, Windows game that's launched in Wine. That's cool. And of course, LibreOffice, OpenRA for strategy game there. Cool. And if we scroll down more, then we got all these categories. So here's all kinds of software that's available in art and design, development, entertainment, health and fitness, games. They got it segmented into all kinds of great stuff here. So it makes it really kind of easy to find the genre that you're looking for if you want to kind of drill down. Otherwise, you can just hit the search button right here and then just type something in and find it directly if you already know what you're looking for. Like, let's click on OBS Studio and see what our options are. So it looks like we got kind of the newest version here, but that's coming from the Snap Store. So if I hit that, then you got Snap Store and Snap Store. So you got two different versions here, a slightly older version, but they're both from the Snap Store. But what if you don't like snaps? And you just want something right from the repos? Well, it doesn't look like we have an option there in the package manager, but we could probably get that out of Synaptic. And I'm not sure if Synaptic is installed or not. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's not. So I'm going to just open the terminal here and drag this down. I'm going to do a sudo apt search for Synaptic, or OBS Studio, I mean, first. And let's just see if it's available. It should just be available right in the repo. And I think it's a fairly recent one. So yeah, in the Jammy repo there, we got 27.2.3-1, so that's good. And if I was going to install OBS Studio, I'd rather have this than the Snap, personally, just my taste. So that's the one I would want to download. So I'm just going to arrow up here and repeat that. I guess I could have just typed it after all that. But so we're going to do a sudo apt install and then Synaptic, because I like Synaptic. That's, for me, in my opinion, kind of a better package manager. It doesn't have all the pretty pictures in it, but it'll find everything that's in the repos. So I'll hit yes here. So this is a nice alternative to the console. If you don't like finding software in the console, Synaptic will give you access to everything that you would find in the console. However, it's in a more visual, GUI environment, so you can kind of see the description and so forth laid out, which I'll show you here in a second if you're not familiar with Synaptic. Okay, got it installed, so let's jump up here and just going to do a search for it. There it is. Nice. So I'm going to click on that and let's open up Synaptic. And then we'll do the same search in Synaptic. We're going to authenticate here and then type in my password, and there's Synaptic. Cool. So Synaptic Package Manager, like I said, doesn't have all the pictures in it and visual metadata like that, but it does have the description and everything. So as a result, Synaptic downloads a lot quicker. You get your results much faster because you don't have all that overhead, or as some people might say, bloat. So I'm going to move the Gnome software over here to the side and just kind of compare them side by side. And I'm just going to hit close on here. That's just a standard message when you first open up, a little intro to Synaptics. So we'll close that. And so here's the Synaptic Package Manager. And it's got a bunch of stuff here right off the bat and a whole bunch of categories in the left-hand pane. And so I'm going to hit search. And then I'm just going to directly type in OBS Studio, OBS-Studio. There, and do a little search. And then it should pop right up and it should give us OBS Studio right from the repo. And here we go. So here's our results, everything related to OBS Studio. And as you can see, it's showing up in the left-hand pane. And then if we look down towards the bottom, we can see OBS Studio, the actual app, and all the other things are libraries and other things that are related to it. And anything that OBS Studio needs will automatically be checked when I checked OBS Studio. So you don't have to worry about the dependencies. But here we got our complete description, a link to the home page, and so forth. So we can kind of see all the info we need, and we can also see in Synaptic that it's showing the latest version as being 27.2.3-DFSG1-1, which is just -1 for short. So that's great. So that looks like the latest and greatest to me. And like I said, in contrast, in the Gnome software, you only have access to the Snap version of it, so you have to get it from the Snap Store. And if you don't like snaps, then you're SOL if you don't use the console or something like Synaptics, if you're a visual person. So that's all you really got to do if you want to get something directly from there. So I would highly recommend installing Synaptic if you're going to be using Ubuntu. Now, maybe after the final release comes out in a couple days, that might be in there by default. I don't know. But if it's not, I just showed you how to get it if you're not familiar with Ubuntu. So there you go. So here we got activities, and we got our top bar showing terminal, and then down here's our menu. So let's magnify our terminal real quick. Just kind of make it bigger, make it a little easier to see. And let's see if we have HTOP on here. I don't think we do, but I'd kind of like to just do an HTOP real quick, I think. So I'm just going to do a sudo apt install HTOP, and we'll just let that install real quick. And there we go. Almost there. All right. So we got HTOP installed, so let's go ahead and run this. And we're using about 1.1 gigs of RAM, and that's about right. That's typically what I see on a Gnome install, is about that. And we got files running in the background, which doesn't really take up that much, so that's not bad. That's a pretty decent score, kind of what I'd expect to see. So I give that a good grade, I guess. Okay, so let's jump down into our main menu here, our launcher. And what I did was I pressed the super key and super A to get here. That was a shortcut. And so here we got our different stuff, and I kind of like to look at our settings. So this is the first page, and like I was saying before, this is horizontally oriented. So I would just scroll to the right to get to the second page here. And I can use my right arrow key to do that. And so here's our settings. I'm going to click on that. And there we have our appearance. That's where we were before. And so I'm going to slide this over. And then let's start up here at network. So here we got our network connections and all laid out very nicely. Then we got our Bluetooth and nothing there, of course. And then we got background. And so here's our different backgrounds. So it does come with a few here in this beta version. And you can also do it by right-clicking and selecting change background, and that'll take you right here also. So both options will get you there. So let's select this and see what that looks like. That flower looks kind of nice. I'll just kind of, yeah, I got a lot of stuff in the way and don't really have a show desktop there, so. But it does look pretty good from what I can see here. I kind of like the color scheming here. It works well. So just kind of minimize that. You can see a little bit more. Yes. And I'll minimize this guy. And now we can get a better look. So yeah, it looks good. And even got a bug there on the flower. Cool. All right. So that's a pretty nice looking background. And let's try this guy and see what that looks like. Wow, I like that too. That's kind of cool. It's got really black in there. And yeah, I'm liking it. It works. I think the colors in the background there, the brightness on that kind of gives it the contrast it needs, even with a dark theme. For me, that kind of works. I think I'll just kind of keep that. Cool. And then if we move on, we got our notifications. We were already in appearance there. And then search, settings, multitasking, applications. That's where you would set your default. Privacy, online accounts. And here in your online accounts, this is where you can hook up with all different accounts that you might have, like in Google, Nextcloud, Microsoft, Flickr, Ubuntu, single sign-on, and so forth. So that's nice to have. And then we got our sharing settings. So if you like to use our remote desktop and desktop sharing, you can turn it on here, and that way you can access your own machine. And one of the improvements in GNOME 42 is that they have improved the remote desktop experience there. So RDP, I think, is now the default rather than VPN. And to me, that makes sense. I think that's a good thing there. Then here are sounds. So these are our sound settings. We got our system volume, volume levels, our output settings where you can select your different devices, input. So everything's all in one spot, nice and easy to get to. And then we have our default alert sound, which I think is probably the drip sound, but you can choose one of the others there too. And then in power mode, we got our power settings here where you can set that. And then our display settings, which is where we were near the beginning of the video when I set it to 1920 by 1080. And our default refresh rate is 60 Hertz, which is good in the US. And then our scaling. And then if you need fractional scaling for any reason, you can turn it on right here by just toggling that little switch. And then that'll change our scale options. And now we can just hit the little drop down. And then we got all these different things here, 125, 150, 175. So you can get in between the 200 or even a little bit past it. So that's kind of nice for different situations. Not something I would use or need actually, but it's nice to know that that's available because I think that could be handy for a lot of people. And then if we come down here, we also have a lot more stuff just by scrolling here. And we got our mouse and touchpad settings. So if you're a lefty, you can set your primary button to be right instead of left. And then here we got test, and this is kind of neat. We got this little graphic here going on, and here you can test your button. So single click, and then it shows down below that I just did a single click on the primary button. That's nice. And I don't think that bear does anything, but I'll just try clicking it. Yeah, nothing. So I think it's mainly just for the button here. And then I'm using my scroll wheel right now. So scroll is working. Nice. So this is a good place to kind of test out your mouse. And then I did that again, and it's showing that I did a single click on the secondary. And then this is a single click on the primary button, then a single click again. So that's kind of showing feedback there that the mouse is working and everything. That's moderately entertaining. And then moving on, we got our keyboard settings over here. And this is where you would add another input source if you needed a different keyboard with alternate characters and all that. Everything can be done right here. Easy peasy. And here we have our printer settings. And of course, we don't have a printer installed by default, of course. Removable media and color right here, which doesn't apply to this. And then region and language settings. And we got accessibility, users. If I go up here, I can change my picture. Nice. We got the cat. And I think I'll go with the guitar. Cool. And well, I think that's good. I like that. And then you can change your password settings, account activity, password, all that good stuff. And then down here, we got default applications. And here you can set your default, change your web browser, your Thunderbird mail, calendar, music, video, photos. So here you can change all your default, and that's always an easy way to do it for your major apps. And then we got our date and time settings. So here, if you don't want it to be automatic, you can turn that off. And you can also set it for an automatic time zone, but the time is right here and your 24-hour format, or you can change it to a 12-hour if you prefer that instead. All good. And then finally, we got the about. So under about, we got our device name and our hardware model, memory, processor, graphics, disk capacity, all the good stuff. The OS name, which is currently Jammy Jellyfish, which is coming from the development branch. But by the time most of you see this video, it'll already be the official release, which is coming in April 1st, 2022. Wayland is our default windowing system. So that's kind of interesting too. They got the Wayland default, and then KVM for virtualization and software updates. And so far I haven't seen any issues really to speak of with Wayland being the default. So it looks like they've gotten it pretty much configured to be compatible very nicely in this distro. Glad to see that. So I'm going to close that. And overall, I like this too. There's that pretty icon right in the center. Well, so it's time for my 2 cents. What do I think? Well, I gotta tell you, not being a big Gnome fan, I'm really impressed with this. In fact, this is a Gnome that I could use. I like it a lot. So Ubuntu, I think, has really done it right. I mean, in my personal opinion, this is kind of the way Gnome ought to look. But of course, you know, that's just my personal opinion, and other people that share that will probably be using the Ubuntu, probably for the same reason. But then again, if you're somebody that really likes the vanilla Gnome, the original Gnome, something like Fedora 36, the beta is out there. And so that might be a nice thing to try out if you want to just test out the vanilla GNOME 42, because Fedora beta would be the way to go there. Just a little extra there. However, the Ubuntu team, I think, did a fantastic job. This is absolutely something I would use if I had to put Ubuntu on my laptop or PC or something like that, and it was set in front of me. I would have no problem using this. In fact, I could probably enjoy it. It would be a nice little change of pace. And I think really the only thing I would change is I'd probably just put the panel bar on the bottom and scrunch it up a little bit like a Mac. And that would kind of be my personal taste, but actually having it on the side there is just fine too. I love the aesthetics. I think GNOME 42 has come a long way in the aesthetics. The GTK4 lib Adwaita design language there, I forgot what you want to call it exactly, but it's got all the widgets and everything. So that framework, for lack of a better term, is really coming of age, and I think that might be not a bad move that they're making there for GNOME, given that they are kind of sticking to a specific vision. It might be a little rough for some developers out there, but overall, I think in the big picture, the long run, it's probably going to work out good for the GNOME project. And it's really gotten the aesthetics looking sharp. The widgets are looking sharp and clean. I like the rounded edges on the windows and the shadows, and everything is really looking polished. So I am going to give this release a double thumbs up. That's saying a lot from a guy that's not a big fan of GNOME. So Ubuntu, you did a fantastic, amazing job with getting GNOME 42 and then still keeping a little bit of elements of 41 and so forth, the earlier versions of GNOME even, all kind of in this one distro. And I think they really struck the perfect balance with it. So with that, I would say when the Ubuntu release comes out on Friday, definitely download it. You can get the beta as well, but then you'll need to upgrade it. So you want to keep that in mind too. It might be worth just waiting another day or so just to get the official release, which will be out on Friday, I believe it is, April 1st. And so that's only a few days away as of the time of filming. So I would highly recommend go grab it, load it into a VM, or just pop it on a spare machine and see what you think. And if you love it, then use it. And with that, I hope this video was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.